Do you ever wonder why you have to dredge up your dark past just to find a measure of freedom and success here in the present?
Well, that's what we'll be talking about here today on My Sober Truth. It's May 1st, and it's time for a double shot of My Sober Truth. Sean, it's May, so you know what we got to start talking about.
Absolutely. Step 5.
And I'm sure everybody watching knows what Step 5 is, but if someone's out there and they haven't watched it, explain Step 5.
Step 5 is basically you've done some soul searching in a previous step. And step 5 is where you admit it to yourself and to God and to another human being. So it can get a little tricky and a little iffy. Most of us don't have any problem sitting around and thinking about stuff. And then you can even talk to a God of your understanding about it. But when it comes to actually opening your mouth and talking to another person, a live person that you're sitting there with about this stuff, it gets a little hard.
And I can imagine that, if you've lived a life like so many of us, that we've done things that we're not proud of, and that we're probably pretty much downright shameful of in that situation. That whole act of opening our mouths, spilling our guts, letting that dark secret out could be intimidating.
Absolutely. It is very intimidating. And for me, it was intimidating in several ways. It was intimidating getting my head wrapped around doing it and telling somebody some of this stuff. That there's, once again, like we said, lots of shame kind of dredged up, and those feelings start coming back up. But the other part of it is trying to remember a lot of the stuff.
Right.
'Cause I didn't want to leave anything out. If I was going to do it, I wanted to do it all the way. Didn't want to leave anything out. Well, a lot of the times I was drunk or I was high, and I don't necessarily remember these things
Right.
the way that other people remember them.
When your memory, when you're impaired, your memory is also impaired.
Exactly.
So how do you bridge that gap when if you blacked out, you did something stupid, how do you rectify and deal with this step knowing that you have gaps in memory?
You do what you can. And then a huge gift that my sponsor gave me, and I say it's a gift because it really kind of got me on track. So I had spent weeks writing and trying to get all this stuff down. And I didn't want to miss anything, like I said. Well, when it got to the actual day where my sponsor and I sat down and I started spilling my guts, he let me go for a while, for a good long while. And then finally he kind of stopped me and he said, "Hey, look, I don't need to know every single thing." He said, none of us got here as angels. We've all done some things we're ashamed of. Most of us have lied. Most of us have cheated. Most of us have stolen. He said, so I don't have to know every single little thing. What I do need is for us to discuss the things that keep you up at night, the things that hold you back from success because you don't feel like you're good enough, or you feel like a crap human being because you've done these things. And you might not even realize it in the moment, but these things are holding you back. Those are the things we really have to dig down and discuss.
That's so right. It's like that old adage we hear, I'm only as sick as my secrets.
That's right. Absolutely.
And there's that aspect of unburdening. And I'd go one further because, that's fear. Well, what if I don't do enough? And I think your sponsor addressed that situation. But there's that other side of it is, recovery is a lot like healing.
Right.
And it's a healing journey, mind, body, soul, spirit. And oftentimes that's done in layers. When we first show up at rehab, we're dealing with that outer layer and it's that external actions. But as we go deeper, peeling off the layer of the onions,
peeling the layers,
we're getting deeper and deeper to the heart of the matter. And, let's face it, this is a lifestyle. This is not a one and done situation.
No.
And most likely at some point, we're going to cycle back to the fifth step. It's May, we're doing it again. And there may be something new that comes up, or you might deal with the same memory or the same action, but yet you see it in a different light a year later because
Absolutely.
You do. And now maybe you realize, not only was it bad in this situation, but it also affected this person and this person. And you have a better understanding.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you get a better understanding of these wrongs that you've done, and you also, in this step, you also are getting an understanding of why you feel like so many people have wronged you, because that's another part of this step that you're talking about. It's not just the things you're guilty about, it's also the resentments that you hold.
Right.
So as you get a better understanding, not only of the things you feel guilty about, but of the things you're holding resentments about, now you can deal with your life moving forward in the future in a much healthier way.
Absolutely. It's such a vital key for the recovery journey and beyond.
Absolutely.
It's nailing this thing down in your life, you know. And as we wrap up, I got to ask the viewers this question because, you know, this is not a talking head show. This is an interactive show, and we want to hear from you guys. And so here's the question. How has letting go of your secrets helped you in your quest for sobriety? You know, I'd love to hear that. Write your answers down below. But this is kind of a two-part question. How has holding back your secrets hurt you on your journey? Again, put your answers below in your comments. And it's important because, you know, as we always read the comments, but other people read the comments too. And you never know that your answer might be a key to freedom for somebody today. So on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean. And here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Do you worry that your dark past is lurking behind you, just waiting to catch up and take away everything you've worked for?
Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today here on My Sober Truth. Hey, it's May 2nd, and it's time for a double shot of My Sober Truth. Sean, I was reading today, and I love a couple quotes from today's reading. It said, cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have.
That's huge.
You know, and
huge.
Then huge. And again, I think as part of a healing journey, as part of a recovery journey, part of what we're doing in our mind is reframing things. We're not lying to ourselves, but we're beginning to see things clearly as they were in that situation. There's another quote in today's reading we were talking about just earlier that we both love, and then I want to hear from you on this one. No longer is my past an autobiography. And I would even say a closed autobiography in that situation, given the shame that we all used to walk in. It's a reference book to be taken down, opened, and shared.
That's so powerful to me because both of those are just huge in my recovery. Because, well, there was a time, I'll never forget, I was riding in the car with my sponsor, and I just asked him, I can't remember how far I was in, maybe a month or two into trying to work a program of recovery, and I was getting started working steps, and I didn't really understand how it all worked, but I knew my plan hadn't worked up to that point. So, you know, I was 42 years old and in rehab, so my plan hadn't worked. So I was trying something else. So, but I asked him straight up, we were riding in the car, and I said, how in the world do I turn all this darkness that I feel from my past, how do I turn that around? And he said, you use your story, you share your story, and the sharing of your story will help someone else because they'll relate to you. And that turns that darkness into light. And, man, that really was a game changer for me. And reading the sentence we were just talking about there that you read, my life's no longer an autobiography. It is a reference book. It's a reference book. It tells me how not to do it. It also is a reference book to show other people, hey, you're not alone. You're not the only person that did this. I'll never forget going into, you know, the rooms of recovery and sharing a story that I fully expected people to shun me or shame me or something else that kind of, if I had been, you know, at a family member's house and shared a story, what I thought I would have gotten from them, or from some people at work, what I thought I would have gotten from them. But I share this story and I hear people giggle and laugh. And I go, you know, and I hear them literally saying, oh, I've done that. Wait a minute, I'm in my group of people here. These people actually know what I'm talking about. They're not judging me.
So that brings up a question in my mind. In that moment, you're sitting in that room, you're spilling your guts to a group of strangers, and you find out for maybe the first time in your life that you're not alone in this.
Right.
What did that do in your heart and in your head?
Well, it was so huge in both of those because here I was, this guy who felt like the crappiest guy in the world. No one had ever done the things that I had done.
And wait a minute, I just heard 3 viewers laugh.
You know, I really thought that. No one was worse than me. I was the worst son. I was the worst dad. I was the worst brother. I was the worst everything. And that's the way I felt. So it was hard to overcome that to do anything successful.
Right.
Well, once I realized that I'm not the worst, I'm somewhere in the middle, just like everybody else. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not the best at this. I'm not the worst at this. I'm, I'm just somewhere in the middle. I'm just a regular guy. And once I found that out, and then I started seeing these steps work in my life, and a huge part of the steps were making me realize that I could get right with a higher power.
Mm-hmm.
I could get right with some other folks that I've harmed,
Right.
and then I got to get right with me.
Right.
I've got to get right with all these different factions, but all of a sudden I got a few steps in, especially when you start getting around step 5, you've already written about or you already have this stuff laid out that you need to talk about, and then you start releasing some of it. And man, these promises just kind of start springing forth. It's just an amazing journey to go through to get from where I was. And I remember who I was. I remember who I was back then, but it doesn't feel like me. It feels like it was a movie about me or something. Or this complete other life, because the person that I feel like I am now is so far removed from all that. And it's been a pretty good little while, 8.5 years now.
Right.
So it really never ceases to amaze me, not only what 12-step program's done in my life, but what I watch it do in other people's lives.
I agree. It's that powerful aspect of community, realizing that you're not alone in your shame, you're not alone in the mess that you went to.
Absolutely.
That you're not the devil incarnate.
That's right.
You just screwed up.
That's right.
In that situation, you have this thing that you've said more than once. I'm going to quote Sean Smith now because I like doing this every once in a while. Sean Smith said this. He said, "When I use my past to help others realize they're not alone, I can turn the darkness in my heart into the light that helps others." And I couldn't agree more. So, as we wrap up, I really would like to hear what our viewers have to say on this whole subject. And so, how are you using your story to help others? Put it in the comments below. And I'd also love to know, how does this help you stay sober? As always, we'd love to read these comments. Sean and I always look at them, and other people do too. And we always know that your comments will help someone else. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean, and here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Do you ever wonder why sharing your deepest secrets helps you recover from addiction?
Well, that's the subject we're tackling today here on My Sober Truth. It's May 3rd, and it's time for a double shot of My Sober Truth. Sean, today is all about cleaning house. And so, tell folks, from your perspective, what does cleaning house mean?
Well, it means going back and, to the best of my ability, trying to right some of the wrongs I've done in the past. It's not just cleaning up the wrongs that I may have done. It's also figuring out how to forgive the wrongs that others may have done to me, the resentments that I have. Basically, it's all about letting go of baggage. And I don't want to feel like I have to be ashamed to anyone.
Right.
I want to be able to look anyone in the eye and talk to them and be a man of honor and of truthfulness. So that's what cleaning house is for me. It's me getting the chance, or taking the chance and the opportunity, to get right with myself, to get right with my higher power, and to get right with other people.
Yeah. And of course, it's May, so we know we're talking about the 5th step.
Right.
We know we're talking about coming clean and involving another person in life. And of
Right.
course, that's delving into our deepest, darkest
Right.
secrets of our past. Shed a little light on that for me. And again, we've talked about this over the last few days, but why is that important?
Well, it's important. There's several aspects to it. One is the lifting of the weight. I mean, for those of us who live this life that I lived, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but the kind of life that I lived, I was not a great person. I lied, cheated, stole, did things I wasn't proud of. I had a lot of shame in my life. So part of it is about that weight of the shame. And I remember when I first started working on the 4-step and the 5th step, and then I started talking to my sponsor about the 5th step, I really kind of come in not thinking that I had a lot of resentments. I thought all the stuff I needed to work on was getting other people to not resent me. What I found was that I did have a lot of resentments, very deep-seated resentments that I needed to do a lot of personal work on. So, we're talking about step 5 and sit down and actually talking to another person.
Well, Sean, if I can interrupt, I got a follow-up question on
Right.
this one. So I get that it's a hard process,
Right.
and it's a hard process, and when we're looking at doing this, it's not the most natural thing to do.
Exactly.
But there are benefits, correct?
Absolutely.
So my question is this: what's the best thing you've ever learned, when you opened yourself up and you shared one of these secrets with someone else?
Well, I can tell you, when I first opened up and started working this 5th step and talking to my sponsor, there were things that I tried to get it perfect. I wanted to put everything down on paper so that I could talk about everything in my past. Didn't really have to wind up talking about everything in my past. I talked about a lot of it, but what I really needed to get down to were the things that really kept me up at night. The things that really, really bothered me and made a difference in my life. So, but the other thing was, as I started unloading some of this baggage and some of this weight was lifted, it actually got me deeper into my feelings, and I started thinking about other things and unloading this baggage of everyone that I thought had resentments against me, or everyone that I thought I had wronged, also allowed me to start realizing the resentments that I did have. Yeah. So you start unpacking, and you've got more to unpack. We've talked about it before about the onion. You
Exactly.
start peeling back those layers, and it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
Sean, I love that. And as we wrap up, I'd like to ask our viewers the same question I just asked you. And that's what's the best thing you've ever learned when you shared your secrets with someone else? And now, guys, I want you to keep in mind that this can be something about yourself, something about other folks, or something about even your higher power. And so take a moment to think about the question, and then just put your answers in the comments below. And remember, what you share today might help someone on their road to recovery tomorrow. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean, and here's hoping today that you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Bye, everyone. Is the lack of honesty and truthfulness with yourself and others causing you pain in life?
Well, that's what we're going to look into today here on My Sober Truth. Well, it's May 4th, and welcome to another edition of My Sober Truth. Sean, entirely honest.
Whew. That's rough, man. Tough stuff.
You pull up the daily reading and you go, oh,
yeah.
And it just hits you where your gut is, because, even in my life now, it's hard.
It is. It's tough.
I mean, there's that tendency, and especially when we've lived lives that we've deceived ourselves for so long, we've deceived others for so long. Now we're ripping the Band-Aid off and have to become completely clean, which is a big aspect of step 5.
Right.
And so, you asked a question at the beginning of is this holding you back?
Right.
And so in your journey, in your walk, how did the lack of honesty and openness hold you back from your best self?
Well, one of the biggest things is, I think a lot of us, and I can definitely speak for myself, you build up this wall around yourself, and you have this crust of who you want everyone to see you as. There's a bit of dishonesty in that. You're not being yourself.
Right.
You're not being genuine. So that's just in and of itself, it's a difficult thing to try to break and get through when you start down this road. But I had been a liar for so long, since I was a kid, and I didn't even know that I was lying a lot of the time. It was just me living life. I didn't even mean to lie. It came natural to me. I did it. I didn't refer to it as lying when I thought about it. I thought about it as BS. I'm just BSing with somebody. I didn't think of it as, no, I'm lying.
Right.
I'm not telling the truth. I'm being dishonest. And, a lot of that stuff doesn't really seem to give you a problem because it's not giving you a problem consciously, maybe. But in your subconscious knows that you're lying. And so inevitably that bleeds over into your consciousness, and you see yourself as a liar, even though I didn't even realize that I seen myself as a liar, but I did. And where that really hurts me, if I know that I lie a lot, I expect that everyone else does too.
Right.
So it's really hard to trust anyone. It's really hard to form any real genuine relationships when you don't trust anyone.
Again, it takes me back to that spiritual truth of reaping what you sow.
Absolutely.
If you want to reap a harvest of truthfulness in your life, you're going to have to sow it in that situation. What was the hardest thing for you in step 5 of just getting gut level honest? Not even to someone else, just with yourself.
I told myself that I was a good, honest person, that I treated friends and acquaintances fairly and was square with them. That's how I thought of myself, kind of exterior wise. But I guess deep inside, I knew that wasn't the truth. I wasn't honest in all my dealings. Like I said, it's not even that I was lying about things that were important all the time.
Right.
It was just me trying to boost myself up, trying to be bigger and better and badder than I really am.
Right.
Smarter than I really am.
Which is just another lie. If you're
It's
not
another
happy
lie.
with yourself, we create a shell. We've talked about this before. But so if someone's struggling entering the step, what's the best advice you could give them?
The best advice I can give anyone about this step is you're going to be afraid. You're going to be scared. It's going to seem like, quite honestly, a lot of times it seems silly. What good is this really going to do me? Just do it. Just pour your heart out, write stuff down, find someone you can relate with who doesn't have an emotional attachment to you.
Right.
And pour your heart out to them and tell them all this stuff. And just a suggestion from myself, find someone who's extremely knowledgeable in step work, someone who's been around for a long time, someone who has helped people work the steps. It was what I needed anyway, and I'm glad I did what I did. Not saying that someone new who had never sponsored anyone before couldn't help, because when I first started sponsoring people, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I tried. Right. I wanted to help, and in the end, I feel like I've helped some people, but first and foremost, I've helped myself. Every day and every minute that I spend talking with someone else about this stuff, about the 12 steps, about being sober, about being clean, is a moment that I'm not using.
I love it. I love it. So as we wrap up this episode, let's ask our watchers the same question. Absolutely. In this situation. So what about you? What's the best advice you have to share with anyone struggling with being honest and truthful in life, and especially surrounding this 5th step? So think about your answer. Take a few minutes to put it in the comments below. We can't wait to read what you have to say, and we can't wait for what you write to improve someone else's life today. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
Hey, I'm Sean, and here's hoping today you stay drunk with success. Bye, everybody. Does talking to another person about your inner demons scare the hell out of you?
Well, that's the issue we're going to tackle today here on My Sober Truth. Well, it's May 5th, and it's time for another double shot from My Sober Truth. Sean, we've all heard that saying, I can't see the forest for the trees.
Yep.
I'm really curious, from a recovery standpoint, what does that statement mean to you?
Well, so for me, it has several meanings, just like a lot of sayings do, but you can't see the forest for the trees. It really ties into the things we're talking about here in the month of May, talking about the 5th step. And your problems seem so huge. They seem insurmountable. You're never going to be able to get over them, that you can't find a way through them. And part of that is because it's garbled. It's in your head. You swish it around. You've thought about it 9 million different ways, and you're not even sure which one of those ways is true. So a huge part of that is just the fact that it's so stuck in your head, and you can't get over it. You can't see around it. You have this huge emotional attachment to what's going on. the humility, the pain that it's caused you. But then there's this old saying that I do love. I've heard some old timers in 12-step programs use, and it's a problem shared is a problem halved.
Oh, I like that.
It really is strong. It's you find someone that you trust,
Right.
and you can put some trust in, and you find someone who has for me, I found someone who had a similar story to mine. We were different in a lot of ways, but boy, our feelings were the same. A lot of the things that we had done were the same, and that's really what a lot of it winds up being. I can go sit in a room and hear 20 people talk, and all 20 of those people are from different walks of life than me. They've led completely different lives than me. But boy, you find this common ground in the feelings that we shared and the reasons that we drank and drugged to excess. So, all that being said, we go back to this sharing aspect. You find someone who you're comfortable with, and you can share these things with them, and it really does just kind of take the load off. Having a problem, you cut a problem down to size when you share it with someone, and that person who has no emotional baggage related to your problem whatsoever can actually give you good, clean, crisp advice on how to handle that and what you can do to move forward and get around it, get through it, get over it, whatever it is you have to do, clean up your side of the street so you can start moving forward in life.
And it's interesting you said dealing with someone who doesn't have the emotional baggage attached to your mess, their ability to have clarity in the situation, their ability to have an insight.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of a question that I wanted to ask you. I said, it's amazing because we seem to be able to do that for other people, even in the midst of our mess. But in the midst of our own mess, we can't seem to do it for ourselves.
Absolutely. It's that emotional attachment.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the powerful keys that gets unlocked in this fifth step.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, what's the best advice you've ever given to someone else but struggled to apply to your own life? If we're being real.
Right. Well, if I really have to look back on that, I would say the best advice I gave to someone else is to not care, to let it go, to not let it bother them anymore. I can tell people that real quickly and easily. Why are you letting something silly like that bother you? And it seems so trivial almost. It's such a small thing, but to the person you're telling it to, it's not small.
Right.
And in my own mind, my problems are my little problems. They're not small. They're these huge things that I'm trying to deal with. And for someone to sit there and go, man, you just got to let them go, without giving you some insight into how to let them go, it's a pretty big deal. And in the end, as I've grown, as I've done a lot of soul searching, as I've learned about myself, I've found that I can let the little stuff go. The old saying, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. It's so powerful, and it's just so true. But boy, when you're bogged down in the middle of it, it's hard to do.
All this reminds me of that saying about making mountains out of molehills. And it's amazing that we have this great ability in and of ourselves that we see our problems from a very myopic standpoint. They're like this, and they look huge to us. But someone from the outside can look at that problem and see it clearly for what it is. Yeah. And I love that part about the fifth step is that when we are honest and open with somebody else, they can help put that mess in perspective for us.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I want to ask our viewers the same question I just asked you that. So for you, what's been the best advice you've given to someone else, but you've struggled to apply it to your own life? Put it in the comments below. Let others read it. Let us read it. And who knows, you might help somebody else today. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean. And here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Bye, everyone. Does it feel like you have a weight around your neck holding you back from your next breakthrough?
Well, we're going to talk about how to tackle that and get your breakthrough here today on My Sober Truth. Well, it's May 6th and it's time for your double shot of My Sober Truth. Sean, this whole month we're talking about the fifth step. We're talking about opening ourselves up, being honest. And in today's daily reflection, I love the title, Hold Nothing Back.
That's right.
It's that call to what we talk about in 12-step circles of rigorous honesty.
Absolutely.
I don't know anybody that really enjoys that.
Right.
Well, not at the beginning, you know. It's got to be challenging.
It
To say
really
that-
is.
It is. So I'm going to ask you two questions. You know, when you did this the first time, there's two aspects of it. You know, you're walking into the meeting. You know, you're going to have to spill your guts. What's going through your mind?
Well, you know, at first it was very scary walking into somewhere with a lot of people I didn't know and talking about things that were very personal. Although for me, I've always been a pretty open guy, but there was always definitely things I would hold back and things I didn't want to let everybody know. You know, it's funny how I kind of make a joke about this, but I used to tell them, I've told people in the past, you know you're a pretty bad off alcoholic and drug addict when you lie to your other hard drinking friends about how much you drank.
Yeah.
You know, so those are the first kind of bits of rigorous honesty I had to get into. I had to be willing to talk to people. Now, on the other hand, one of the things that makes it easier to talk is once you realize you're sitting in a room full of people like yourself.
Right.
People that aren't going to laugh at you or do take a deep breath and judge you. No, most of the people in that room, when I start talking about my stuff, they go, "Oh yeah, I've done that." You know, so it just makes it a little easier.
Speak to that, will you? The importance of finding really the right person or people,
Right.
especially that first time to open up and be honest with it.
You know, people talk about finding their tribe. I definitely found my tribe when I walked into the meetings of you know the 12-step meetings that I came into, and I find the people that really understood me and they didn't judge me.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the biggest thing. I never felt judged sitting there, and I knew that was where I belonged there,
Right.
and you know I could relate with the people around me, and the biggest part of relating for me was it's not that I find that everyone there has the exact same story on the surface as me. It's way deeper than that. What I relate to is the feelings that they had, the feelings of not being enough, the feelings of you know letting people down, the feelings of always feeling like you just couldn't quite do what you should have done, and then you drank, you drugged, you needed to cover those feelings up. So when I found those people, it was very much, I remember thinking early on, you know, it's weird we're all sitting here not drinking, but it kind of feels like being at the bar.
Right.
Because these are the people I'd be talking to if I was at the bar. So in that respect, it wasn't as hard to open up. I started opening up pretty quickly.
Sean, I love what you just shared, but I have a follow-up question for you. Now that you've done this, and now you've been walking in your sobriety for a while right now,
Yep.
how has living a life of rigorous honesty that we read about changed your life for the better?
Well, what I would say, one of the biggest things is I don't have messes to clean up.
Or as
I don't,
many.
I don't, you know, right. And you don't have as, well, when you do, you clean them up in the moment. You don't,
Right.
you don't lie about it and then 2 years from now have to clean up that mess. And it's way worse because some people know you lied to them about it.
Right.
I've heard people say many, many times, you know, when you tell the truth, you don't have to remember a story. And it's just the way it is. All I have to remember is what actually happened. I don't have to remember what happened and remember another story about the lie that I told. So I can turn it back around to this. I stayed in pain a lot when I was in the midst of addiction. A lot of stuff hurt me, hurt my feelings. I didn't like to talk about it. I didn't like to think about it. So I drank to cover that up. Well, I still don't like pain, but I don't have drugs and alcohol to help me cover it up. So instead of covering it up, I just do the right thing in the beginning and I don't have anything to cover up. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. And, you know, I make mistakes all the time. The difference in how I live these days is how fast I want to get to that and clean it up and tell somebody, hey, look, I made this mistake, but this is what I'm doing to try to fix it. Just owning up to it, fessing up to it, and being clean, being accountable, being a person that other people can trust. And it's a great feeling being that way.
Sean, that's terrific, and I couldn't agree more of what rigorous honesty can do for your life. And I would really love for our viewers to chime in on this same question. So answer me this: how has living a life of rigorous honesty changed your life for the better? Take a moment, think about the questions, put your answers down in the comments below. You never know, your answer may inspire, encourage, or improve someone's life today. And on that note, my friends, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean, and here's hoping today that you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Has not picking the right confidant ever came back to bite you?
Well, we're going to look into that today here on My Sober Truth. Well, it's May 7th, and it's time for another double shot from My Sober Truth. I love today's reading, man, respect for others. And it's that whole concept of really being wise in choosing a sponsor, choosing a confidant, especially
Absolutely.
for that fifth step.
Right.
You know, there's this tenet that we read about. The concept is we don't want to dump our stuff on persons that can't handle it.
Right.
You know, in your opinion, who would be the right kind of person to be a confidant or sponsor?
You know, it's tough to tell someone just coming in what to do. Let me rephrase that. It's tough for them to hear what to do. Most people don't like being told what to do. You don't necessarily, most folks don't like to take direction. We think we know what's best for us. The truth of it for me was I needed to find someone that I related to.
Right.
I needed to find someone that I could, in a hurry, figure out whether or not I trusted them. Because I wanted to blaze through these steps. They told me it would help. I don't know if I believed them or not, but I did believe that what I had done in the past hadn't worked.
Right.
So I needed to do something different. They told me this would give me some relief, and I wanted to do it. So I needed someone I could relate to, that I could work with, and someone I felt that I was not judged by.
Right.
The part of that I didn't know was, luckily for me, I was a few states away from home. I didn't know anyone here. I didn't know anyone where I went to rehab. I can only imagine that if I had been back home in Florida trying to do this and work these steps, I probably would have had a sense that, well, maybe I should talk to somebody I already know who already has a sense of my problems and what I've done. You know, whether it be a trusted friend or, I don't know, you know, growing up in and around church, I knew some clergy members, someone who knew me.
Right.
You know, would have probably been a big, I would have wanted to do that. Instead of just talking to someone I didn't know, that didn't really make sense. Looking back on it now with the information that I currently have, it does make sense to talk to someone you don't really know because of
Why is that?
emotional attachment to your issues.
Let's go deeper in that.
Okay.
Why would someone's emotional attachment to your issue disqualify them or make them a bad confidant?
Well, if someone has emotional, let's just talk about it from this perspective. Do you feel like you're a counselor? Do you feel like you give pretty solid advice?
I do.
Do you always take your own advice?
Oh, no.
Because you have this emotional attachment to your baggage, to the things you've got that you don't like about yourself or your life. There's an emotional attachment to that. I had a huge emotional attachment to all my baggage, but so did a lot of the people that I had harmed.
Right.
These people that not only the people that I had harmed and the people that I had done wrong, but then also the people that I had resentments against. I had emotional attachments, but so did the people who had been working along with me, loving me even when I was unlovable.
Right.
They have emotional attachments to my baggage as well. So they're not necessarily thinking clear. There's a reason why if you go talk to a clergy member that you don't know or doesn't know your story, there's a reason why if you go talk to why so many people pay for counseling and psychiatric type services these days, because it works.
Right.
Unloading your stuff on someone who has no emotional attachment to your baggage, that breeds better advice to you.
Right.
B, you're in no way, shape, or form going to harm them
Exactly.
with your baggage.
Exactly.
You know, I could sit down and start telling, you know, my mom, just for instance, or my dad, some of my stuff, but I'm liable to tell them something I thought they knew about that they didn't even know about, and I might hurt them again.
Right.
Even worse, and that's the last thing that I want to do.
Right.
If I do go back and make amends, and once again, this comes later in the steps, please work the steps in order. It comes later in the steps, you know, you're going to go back and make some amends. Well, then you have the knowledge of your own misgivings
Right.
to work on. And hopefully you're still working with a sponsor and you have someone else who's already done this and made those mistakes, and they can help you with how you present what you're going to present later on in making amends. But getting back to what we're talking about, it's that emotional attachment, whether it's going to hurt you or whether it's going to hurt the person that you're talking to, is the main thing that, from my point of view, makes it so important to pick someone kind of outside your normal life, outside your normal realm.
That totally
If
makes
that makes
sense.
sense.
That's totally makes sense. So you're mentioning your sponsor. Tell me about him.
Well, he was, the first time I ever remember meeting him, he said some things that just, for lack of a better way to put it, punched me right between the eyes. It was very obvious he had lived a similar life. In some ways, the exterior was similar, but what was really alike were the feelings that I heard him talk about. Those were the feelings of inadequacy, the feelings of having to build this huge ego in order to compensate with feelings of inadequacy. One of the first things I remember hearing him say was he called himself an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. And I don't know that anything's ever hit me between the eyes harder than that, hearing that statement, because that is exactly what I was, an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. And it automatically kind of gave me this kinship with this guy that I went, man, this guy knows what I'm talking about. He knows how I'm feeling. Sounded like he was reading from my book.
Right.
When he started sharing the things that he had done. And not just the things that he had done, but the way he went about doing the things that he had done. He and I had so much in common in that respect. And then the other part of it is, I saw a peace. I saw this light in his eyes that I didn't have. Mm-hmm. He was one of the first people I remember kind of picking up on and noticing, this guy's got something I've never had.
Right.
This peace about him, this, he's just relaxed and he's comfortable in himself. And I'd never been comfortable in myself. And going back and talking to him, he had never been comfortable in himself until he started doing the work that this program lays out before us. So
I love it. You know, from your description, it's easy to see that he made you feel safe.
Absolutely.
And it was somebody that wasn't going to be damaged when
Right.
you unloaded and unburned
Right.
yourself in step 5, correct?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, I want to pose a question to the viewers today.
Absolutely.
And so what about you? We'd love to hear about your first sponsor. The second part of this question is, what's the best thing they ever did or said to you? Would love to hear that. Put it in the comments down below. We're going to read this, but more importantly, we hope what you write is going to inspire and help someone else today. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean. And here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Do the burdens of your past feel like they're too much to carry?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about today here on My Sober Truth. Well, it's May 8th, and it's time for another double shot of My Sober Truth. A resting place. Great reading today.
Yeah.
I love that line, and it talks about the steps all being about deflating egos.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody likes to have their ego deflated, but,
No.
you know, you've said before, you've quoted to me many times that, what was the statement you made about ego and egomaniacs?
Well, I was an egomaniac with an inferiority complex.
So as a former egomaniac with an inferiority complex, what was it like approaching the 5th step knowing that this part of you needed to be laid down?
I didn't like it. It was very scary. I didn't like it and I didn't want to do it. It was scary to think about laying down all the defense mechanisms that I had ever had.
Right.
And that's really kind of what what you're doing here. Thank goodness I probably didn't realize the extent of it when I was doing it. You know, all I knew at that point was I needed some change in my life. Right. And what I had been doing hadn't worked, and I wanted to do something different. And they told me this would work, and I believed them. And really, honestly, I started to feel a little different maybe with the previous steps, but this is the one where when you do it and you do it wholeheartedly, change starts happening.
Gotcha. The
way that you feel about yourself and about your life starts to happen. It never fails when I talk to somebody about it. They talk about this step, and you don't even realize this isn't the hardest step that you do.
Right.
Some of the ones that seem a little, you don't really get them when you first read them, that come after this are really tough. This step is the one everybody's worried about, step 4, step 5. No one wants to write down a list of all the stuff they've done wrong. And no one wants to talk about all their resentments they have towards everybody, because when you speak them out loud, sometimes they sound kind of stupid. So deflating the ego, my ego is what protected me. My ego is what kept me safe. And to think that I was going to stick a pin in that,
right,
it was scary.
Right. So you went through the process.
Yes.
You made it alive out to the other side.
I did.
So how did that process of coming clean to someone else, unburdening yourself, help you in your journey?
Well, you know, you don't even realize it when you're going through it, but it takes a weight off. You know, you talk about, you hear people say, drop the rock. It's all that stuff that's been burdening you for so long, all the stuff that, and when I say burdening you, sometimes that's kind of, what does that really mean?
Right.
What does that mean? So for me, what that meant was, it allowed me to get it out, get this stuff out, and then kind of organize it into a way that I could do some work on it. It also allowed me, talking with someone else who had no emotional, he didn't have any emotional attachment to anything that I was telling him. He not only could help me lay it out so that I could figure out how I was going to go about trying to make things right, cleaning up my side of the street, so to speak. Not only did he help me with that, he could also help me realize how a lot of the stuff that I was carrying around just wasn't reasonable. It was ridiculous. I was carrying around stupid stuff that I had just held on to, grudges that I had held on to. And, you know, you get them, it becomes a part of your identity when you carry it around for so long. And then you have this other stuff that starts coming to the surface. When you clear out the stuff on the top, other stuff starts coming to the surface, things that you hadn't even thought about. For me, things that I hadn't even thought about in a long time started bubbling to the surface, and I started remembering things. Well, all of those things, I have no doubt, played into my subconsciousness. And even though I didn't think about them every day, they were still a problem for me because they played into how I felt about myself. So even though I may not have remembered a little bitty lie that I told someone 10 years ago, my subconscious remembers that.
Gotcha.
And all of that plays into how I feel about myself. And how I feel about myself plays into how I'm going to treat myself, but then how I'm going to treat others, and how I'm going to conduct myself moving through life. It's a lot to take in. It really is. And it gets really deep, and I highly recommend it.
Well, I mean, you said it before, people fear the step.
Yeah.
But getting to the other side of that step, it's like the floodgates open.
It does. It really is.
And your eyes get open. And maybe for the first time in life, you have the opportunity to see yourself, or not in life for a long time, to see yourself as you actually are.
Right.
Which is a great foundation to build on.
Right.
So, Sean, as we wrap up, I want to pose the same question to our viewers today, especially for those of you guys who've been through step 5. Share with us this. How did doing step 5, coming clean to a trusted confidant, really help you in your recovery journey? Think about it. Write your questions, write the answer to this question in the comments section below. We can't wait to read what you have to say, and we can't wait to hear how your testimony helped someone else on their road to recovery today. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean, and here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Do you struggle with letting go of the character defects you used to use as a shield to protect yourself?
Man, a lot of people have this struggle, and we're going to talk about that today here on My Sober Truth. Well, it's May 9th, and it's time for another double shot of My Sober Truth. Walking through fear. Ooh, I love this. In fact, there was so much about this reading that I think we've read it so many times, and each time we come back to this, we go, ooh, ooh, ooh. This line that the writer wrote says, I became aware that all of my defects of character stem from my need to feel secure and loved.
Wow.
I know that hit me between the eyes because I think about my life, my walk, my struggles, and so many things that I chose to do because I had this empty place in my heart.
That's right.
And how many people have we talked to that have been on this journey? They have a similar story that, it's not the substance that they chose that caused the addiction, but something that happened way before.
Right.
And I think that's why in every 12-step program, we see people focus on this concept, these character defects.
Right.
As you started this journey, we've talked about your walk a lot, but what were you afraid to let go of? Coming into recovery, coming into the beginning of this journey, what did you fear letting go of?
I was scared to let go. I talked about it before in other episodes, but it's the fear of letting go of that wall.
Right.
That crush, that exterior that I had built up around that protected me. It allowed me to not care.
Right.
It allowed me to be this person that I had built myself into what I was. The flip side of that was I didn't like that person very much. I'd done a lot of stuff that I wasn't proud of. So it's this dichotomy of this is the thing that protected me, but it's also the thing that's doing me a ton of damage. And I like what you already talked about, that thing from the reading today where talked about the need to feel secure and be loved.
Right.
And for so many of us, our addictions stem from not wanting to feel the way that we feel.
Right.
And it comes from this place of hurt and trauma. And I'm not even always sure, how you get it. Like for me, I look back and I'm not even sure, I don't know how much trauma I had, but there were definitely, I definitely didn't feel like I was enough. I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't feel like I was tough enough. I didn't feel like I was strong enough. There was definitely feelings of feeling less than. And those feelings made me seek things to help me not feel that way, which is where the mind-altering substances come in. I would say that I still do have a bit of an addictive personality. If I like a little bit of something, then a lot must be better.
Right.
There's an old joke we tell in recovery circles that a lot of people might not find funny, but those of us in recovery circles definitely find it funny, If the medicinal world, if drug manufacturers come out with a new pill that cured addiction, first thing I'd ask is, wonder what two of them will do. So, I do have a bit of an addictive personality, but there's something else that fed that, and that was that need to fill up this hole that I had inside of me. And the wall protected me.
Right. Right,
So,
absolutely, and that's what we do. I mean, we, as human beings, it's such a basic thing to feel loved, feel secure, because
Right.
the opposite is to feel unloved, to feel
Right.
unsafe in that situation. And you mentioned I couldn't define one overarching trauma. Well, the majority of the people I've talked to are in that boat.
Right.
It's not the big things that matter,
Right.
but sometimes it's the lies that we pick up along the way, like you said, I don't matter, all this other stuff, and then we start building up a persona around ourselves. We start building a lie. We start living a lie because we're ashamed of who we are.
Right.
And if we have that little bit of an addictive personality,
Right.
it just sucks us in, because all of a sudden, here's this thing that makes us feel good about ourselves, even if it's for a temporary period of time.
Yeah.
But that's never the root cause.
Right.
The root cause, we got to go back, because we want to feel basically loved and secured. And as you go through this fifth step, as we do all this stuff, we're unmasking all the lies we built around ourselves, and we're getting down to our true self.
Absolutely.
And the truth is you might not 100% like that person right now, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Because you're in process.
Exactly.
Even being willing to take the step and walk through this process, you're going to be in a better place. And you're going to be laying a foundation to be able to become the person that you really want to become.
Right.
Absolutely. So I'd ask you the question of what you're afraid to let go of beginning in the journey. And I'd like to pose that same question to our watchers today as we wrap up.
Absolutely.
If that's possible. So if you're watching this, and this is for anybody watching, not just people who've done the fifth step, but what were you if you've done the fifth step, or what are you if you haven't done it yet?
Right.
What were or are you afraid to let go of, and why? It's important. Take a few moments, put your answers down in the comments below. We can't wait to read what you have to say, and we can't wait for your comments to inspire someone else today.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
Hey, and I'm Sean, and here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Do humiliating events from your past keep you locked in a cycle of shame and secrecy?
Well, that's what we're talking about today here on My Sober Truth. Well, it's May 10th, and it's time for a double shot of My Sober Truth. Sean, I love today's reading. It was great. I love the title, Free at Last, because that's what we want to be. And at the core of today's reading, it's all about humility. And the question you asked in the beginning is, are the humiliating events from your past keeping you locked in a cycle? And I think when we talk about those two words, and especially early on in recovery, there might be some confusion as what's the difference between humility and humiliation? And I'd love to hear it from your point of view.
Well, humility, I've had to grow into learning what that really was. Humiliation, on the other hand, I knew completely what humiliation was. I felt it all the time. I even probably at times that I didn't really need to feel humiliated. I would feel humiliated. I would take things that other people said and did to me and feel humiliated about it when they really didn't mean anything by it. But my self-esteem was so low that any little thing would set off my humiliation. And it's probably one of the reasons that I built my ego up so big and I was so quick to jump on others. And it doesn't make any sense really. But I was really quick to jump on others and humiliate them. And that makes no sense considering how bad I hated being humiliated.
Gotcha.
And then I grew myself to a point of, I say grew, I enlarged kind of my personality so big that I decided that I hated being humiliated. So I decided that I wasn't going to be humiliated by anything, even though I really was. I couldn't trick myself into that. But that ego on the outside made all my friends, all my acquaintances, the people who knew me, they thought, well, Sean will do anything. He doesn't care. He doesn't get humiliated. And I would. But then by the time I got home and I was sitting there by myself, it was a lot of humiliation involved in it.
Right.
So that being said, humility is kind of the opposite of that. It's knowing myself, basically. It's knowing my own limitations. It's knowing who I am and what I'm capable of. It really is, humility is about getting to know me getting to know me, so that I know what I'm capable of, I know what I'm not capable of. I know, and it's also me getting to know my willingness, what I'm willing to do to go through and do certain things, to accomplish things, and what I'm not willing to do. And then kind of once you have that self-knowledge, that really opens you up to being able to figure out what kind of life what kind of life you want, what kind of life I wanted. I could figure out this is what I'm willing to do. So then where does that enable me to be able to do? I could go through, I can have this life, I can have this kind of life. What do I want to work towards?
It's almost like the shame and secrecy that we end up carrying around in our addicted days are the original gateway drug.
Yeah,
if you think about that one.
Yes.
It's the thing, we have shame. We don't want people to know about the shameful event or the shameful thing of their life, so we start getting into secrecy. And when that's not enough, like in your case, you start building up this ego-driven persona.
Absolutely.
But none of that saves us from those feelings of humiliation.
Right.
And then the only thing that we have beyond that is to drown that shame, drown those secrecies, drown our fears of getting found out in whatever our drug of choice is in that situation. And the opposite is true with humility. When we're open, when we're honest, when we're transparent, when we have the opportunity to be real with ourselves, be real with God, and finally be real with that someone else, we get to discover who we are. We get to discover the kind of life we're meant to lead. And then we have the opportunity to do something about it.
Absolutely. It's getting to know yourself and really being honest with me about who I am, what I want, where I want my life to go, what kind of life I want to lead. And then you ask those other questions. Am I willing to do this? You can question your own willingness, because when I was out in living in addiction, I had these dreams, these things that I wanted to accomplish. But for one thing, the drugs and alcohol would definitely put a hamper on that, because one, if you're hungover every day, you're not going to work very hard towards anything. Right. So the other part of that is you're not really honest with yourself about what it takes to do those dreams, and then whether or not you're willing to do what it takes to put that into motion. So all of it kind of works back in together, and as far as that shame and secrecy, and we're still talking about the fifth step, it's still May. So unloading all of that stuff, being able to get a look at it, being able to do something about it, working towards what we're working towards in working the steps, which are the next steps to come, which is where you do them in order and you get to the point where you actually do get to go start making some amends to people. You start to get to really clean up that mess that you've made of your life. And because of that, it starts becoming clearer and clearer and clearer who you really are.
And I couldn't agree more. And one of the things we know about any 12-step program, it's you're laying a foundation for yourself to do the next step.
Absolutely.
There's a temptation I want to go ahead and make this right. I mean, because once we realize we've done wrong, if you have any sense of common decency, you want to fix it. But the importance here is to get yourself right, because part of that process, part of being able to have a honest representation of yourself in your own mind is not only do you get to see your strengths, but you get to see your weaknesses.
Absolutely.
And that's not a shameful thing. That's just knowing who you are at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And you talk about the kind of what you were saying, you're laying this foundation. It goes back, you hear people all the time say, it's the journey.
Right.
It's not the end game, it's the journey. The journey is what makes you who you are. Working these 12 steps is the journey. It will make you, if you do them to the best of your ability, I have zero doubt that you will become a better person and be working towards being what you want to be.
Sean and I talk about it all the time, that we feel like deeply in our hearts that the secrets of success in every area of life is wrapped up in each of these 12 steps.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter if you've been an addict. I say it all the time. I don't care if you're an addict. I don't care if you're an alcoholic. I don't care what it is. If you take these 12 steps and start living a life based around the principles they teach, you're going to have a better life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
As we wrap this up, I want to kick a question back to our viewers. What's the biggest thing you discovered about yourself when you faced a past humiliating event head on? Now, that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Really curious to what happened with you. Take a moment, put your answers down here in the comments section below, and who knows, your answer may be a little key that releases a little peace, purpose, and prosperity in someone's life today. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
Hey, and I'm Sean, and here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Love y'all. Is the fear of what you'll dig up from your past keeping you from stepping into your freedom today?
Well, that's what we're going to dig into today here on My Sober Truth. Hey, it's May 11th, and it's time for a double shot of My Sober Truth. So, Sean, it's May. We're talking about the fifth step, primarily. And, you know, as I look at today's reading, a new thing came out to me. That one of the aspects of the fifth step is not just us unburdening it to someone else, but us being in that safe place for someone else to unburden to.
Right.
So I'd love to hear your comments and your insights on that concept.
Well, it's that sense of being you're doing a program, but you're part of a fellowship. And as you know, a huge part of the program is to unburden yourself, is to talk to someone, get some new insights on some of these troubles that have really held you back in life and really kind of held you down. And, you know, for a lot of us, you know, I didn't even know it at the time. I thought I liked to party.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, I was hiding the fact that I didn't like who I was. And I didn't like who I was because of a lot of these resentments and a lot of this stuff that had built up in me over time. You know, just different things that had happened to me over the years. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like who I saw in the mirror. I didn't like who I'd become. And once again, we talk about it a lot. You get in that kind of endless circle of, I don't like how I feel, so I do something to help how I feel, you know, a mind-altering substance. Well, then I do more things that I don't like that make me feel like I'm not a very good guy, so I have to do some more mind-altering. I mean, it's just vicious cycle. And so you have to get some of that stuff out in front of you. You really have to, at least for me, I had to get it in front of me before I could figure out how to work on it.
Right.
I had no idea how to work on this stuff. Not only did I not know how to work on it, I didn't even know what it all was. I had buried some of it so down that my consciousness didn't even think about it, but I have no doubt that my subconscious did. It was still buried in there, and it affected the way that I did things. So the flip side to all of this, of unburdening yourself, is next now you want to become a sponsor or become a person who is trusted. Right. So you're doing those things. You're working this program. You're becoming this person of value.
Right.
Well, now someone's going to see you and they're going to need to talk to you.
Right. One of the things that, and we've talked about this because we talked about the importance earlier about finding that safe person, but it's like you have to become the safe person.
Absolutely.
And as you find that measure of freedom, that measure of healing, it's being willing to do for someone else what someone was willing to do for you.
Well, you, more than likely, if you're anything like me, you saw someone and you just decided to take a chance.
Right.
This is a person I believe is not lying to me. This is a person that I believe is telling me the truth. And this is also a person that I believe has the best interests of alcoholics at heart. He's trying to help. This person was trying to help me. And I seen it from very early on. Well, now all of a sudden you become that person who is trusted, and someone listens to you share from across the room, and you don't even know what you just did to their heart, how you touched them with your share. And the next thing you know, they're asking you, hey, can you be my sponsor? Hey, can you come listen to my fifth step? I really need to talk to someone. You really become a member of the fellowship at that point.
It's like you find your people, you find your tribe, you find these people you can relate to that are safe. And that's the very definition of fellowship. It's what separates a program or a system or a seminar from what we're talking about in that situation. It's people coming together for that, to mutually benefit each other and be safe for each other and lift each other up.
It's the sharing.
Absolutely.
It's the, like you just mentioned, you know, a seminar or a class or something that you watch, you know, a video that you watch, a TED Talk or a YouTube or something that you watch. They're all extremely valuable things and ways for you to learn. But something different happens in that intimacy of sharing with another person.
Step 5 is all about vulnerability. You know, and trusting someone else and being willing to take that step for someone else. And so as we wrap this up today, I got a question for our viewers. And the question is this: what are you willing to do in this step to find the freedom and success you want for your life? And so take a moment, put your answers down here in the comments below. We really want to hear what you have to say about this. And you never know, your answer might be that thing that someone else needs to hear today. So on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean, and here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Are your attitudes and feelings about your past keeping you from living a full life today?
Well, I think it's time we talk about that here today on My Sober Truth. Well, it's May 12th, and it's time for a double shot of My Sober Truth. Sean, I love the title of today's reading, The Past is Over. You know, when we look at our past lives steeped in addictions, there's a tendency to want to wish away all the stupid stuff we did.
That's right.
But I'd love to hear from you to understand, why is that something we should never wish for?
Well, I can tell you this. There's this thing you hear in and around the rooms of 12-step recovery. You might hear someone say, I'm a grateful alcoholic, or I'm a grateful addict. And it's really hard to understand that when you're first coming in. What do you mean you're grateful to be an alcoholic? What do you mean you're grateful to be an addict? But the truth is, for me, and for a lot of other people that I talk to and have conversations with about it, where it comes in is this sickness, this disease, whatever you want to call it, it is a part of what makes me me. And the truth is, more than likely, I never would have done the work, personal work, that it takes, the reviewing of my past and the working on of my past to get through to the point where I am today. I'm not saying that if I hadn't started using, I couldn't have made a good and fruitful life. Maybe I could have, but I don't know that. I don't know that I could have. I don't know any of that. This is what I know. And I can be a grateful alcoholic, recovering addict, recovering alcoholic, because I have done this work. I have, for lack of a better way to put it, I found what makes me tick. Right. I know these things about myself that I maybe never would have known. And, the past is over. I don't wish that I could erase the past. If there is one thing that I wish I hadn't hurt so many people, but that also comes along with the way things have played out in my life. Some people have hurt me as well. So in order for all that to play out to get me here where I need to be today, things had to happen the way that they happened. There's so much in working these steps that just helps you get to know yourself, gets to help you know who you are. And one of the big things that I've come across over these past years in doing this stuff is, I don't want to wish anything away, because it doesn't do anything. Right. It doesn't get you anywhere. What gets you somewhere is figuring out what it takes to change yourself. If I don't like what's going on in my life, I need to figure out what I can do to change it. And then I have to be really honest with myself about willingness. Right. Am I willing to do this? Am I willing to go to any lengths to get what I want out of my life? And when I was first in the program, that was a very simple question for me, because I was so sick and tired of being the person I didn't like, that I was willing to go to any lengths. I was willing to do whatever somebody else said to me. And luckily for me, I started having some success really quickly. And I seen how things were getting better. And it made me want, in a very addict, alcoholic kind of way, it made me want more and more. Man, this feels good. This feels better. I feel some of this lifting off me. Right. I want some more. So nowadays, it's more about me looking at how I'm going to be a success in life. I want to be a success. And I'm not talking about monetary success necessarily. I'm not talking about anyone else's thoughts of success. I'm talking about my thoughts on success. Gotcha. I want to be a successful human being. Right. All that other stuff are some of the fruits of the labor of becoming a successful human being.
Right.
When I start a new project, when we started My Sober Truth, we had to sit down,
Right.
make a list, figure out what it was going to take to do this, and then ask ourselves the honest question, are we willing to do it?
Right.
Well, here we sit, so we're willing to do this.
Right. Changing our perspective on the past.
Yeah.
And being able to see what got us to the depths of addiction.
Right.
And it's out of the depths of addiction
Yep.
that we begin to deal with those underlying issues that caused us to use in the first place.
Absolutely.
And so in some sense, the rock bottom was the blessing, even though it's kind of hard to talk about that. And wishing that rock bottom away, if you have any success in life now in your journey, is wishing away the foundation of your success.
Absolutely.
Changing your perspective on that situation
Right.
is what we're talking about here. Changing your perspective. What are you willing to do to change your perspective? And sometimes it's getting outside of yourself and saying, this bad thing, how can it be used for good?
Right.
This negative situation in my life, this negative experiences, I guarantee that there's someone in your fellowship, there's someone in your group, there's someone that you're going to run across in life that as you continue to build a life on a great foundation, you're going to be able to help them, you're going to be able to relate to them because they're going to see where you came from.
Yep.
You're going to provide hope for them.
Yep. They're never going to be able to get over, around, past, through this barricade
Right.
in their success without somebody that they can relate to and somebody else. You know, I talk about it, and I've talked about it in previous episodes, where until I started getting that out and voicing it and actually speaking into it, it was almost like it was some sort of fiction, but then it wasn't fiction. It was like, I can't believe I ever did that
Right.
bad thing. But I had done that bad thing, and my subconscious knew that I had done that bad thing, and it bled over into my consciousness.
Right.
So once I put some truth to it, put a voice to it, started talking about it with another human being who did not judge me, they looked at me and went, "Oh man, I've done stuff like that,"
Mm-hmm.
or "Man, I didn't do that, but I did this, and it's very similar." And you talk about those things, and now it's a healing process for both of you.
Right.
And how do you get rid of it? How do you turn this darkness into light? You share it with someone else.
Right.
So,
And all of that changes your perspective. This brings me to a question I'd love to ask the viewers. And so I don't know where you are in your 12-step journey or even where you are with this 5th step, but here's the thing. What action are you willing to take today to start changing the way you feel about your past? Okay? Think about it. Put your answers down in the comment section below, and who knows, your answer may change someone's life today. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
and I'm Sean, and here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Love
Bye.
y'all. Are you looking for the easier, softer way out when it comes to recovery?
Well, we're going to be talking about that today here on My Sober Truth. Well, it's May 13th, and it's time for a double shot of My Sober Truth. The easier, softer way, the name of the reading for the day. You know, there's always some temptation, no matter what we're doing in life, to get the easy way out. I mean, I don't think anybody signs up for the hard way.
Right.
But specifically when we talk about recovery and people get to this step,
Right.
there's a tendency to let shame, guilt, regret, whatever, to make you pull back and skip over the step. I mean, you think about it, you've already written everything out.
Yep.
You've already kind of gotten right with God. Why the heck do I need to do this with another person?
Right.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it works, is my thoughts on it. It works. It's a tried and true method of helping fellows like me and ladies like some of the ladies that I know, what I would like to call, or what is called, true alcoholics, real addicts. And we're talking about people who maybe have tried a lot of other things and they just can't quite get it right, can't get it dialed in, can't get their life to go right. And, for a lot of people, they come into AA several times. That's what I did. I wound up going to meetings over the course of a year or two. I'd go to a meeting and then not go back for a few months. And then I'd go to another meeting, and it always sounded good, but man, I wasn't willing to do what it took. To be quite honest, I was looking for an easier, softer way. What I was actually looking for is a way to manage drinking. I wasn't looking for a way to quit drinking. I wasn't looking for a way to quit drugs. I was looking for a way to taking it back to the first step, it's a two-part step. My life had become unmanageable. There was no doubt about that. So my life was unmanageable, but I wasn't sure that I was a real alcoholic.
Right.
So I kept trying to see if I was a real alcoholic. And I certainly would have never done this step, which is extremely difficult to do.
Right.
Sharing those most sensitive parts of your past. So what I've found now is that for me and for a lot of people like me, this is the easier, softer way. There wasn't, I tried, there wasn't a way for me to get around this. The only way for me to do this is to go right through it. I had a mentor, a teacher at the rehab that I went to, who he would just tell you. I remember on like one of the first days that I was there, I wound up in a meeting with a bunch of people, and this guy came in and talked. And one of the things he told us was, he said, you know, he was basically telling us to look at our life and see where we're at. He goes, no one walked into this room today, and no one got here in a limousine. No one got here easy. He said, you all probably deserve the seat you're sitting in. And one of the most things that impressed the most upon me was, he said, look at your life, your program. If you're sitting here, your program hasn't worked. And I never thought about my life as my program, but he was exactly right.
Right.
What I was doing, the program that I was leading in my life had not worked.
Right.
I was 42 years old and sitting in rehab. My program hadn't worked. But to finish his sentence is, your program hasn't worked. Give our program a try.
And that's it. You give it a try. What do you have to lose?
Right.
Let's speak to this other side of step 5. And here's a question I have for you. And it's an interesting question. How did processing through this, what seemed like a hard step to begin with, help you in your recovery journey?
Well, I can tell you one thing was, it was the action of doing this, and then the relief that came with doing this step has worked its way over into the rest of my life, as it should, as a person who does what he can. I'm not perfect, I'm not an angel, but I try to live my life according to the 12 steps of recovery. It's a great life to live. But so 10, 11, and 12, part of 10, 11, and 12 is when you make a mistake, you fix it right then. Well, what I found out was, I didn't like pain very much in my life. That's the reason I drank. It's the reason I drugged. So now I don't have anything to help me with the pain. The drinks and the drugs weren't the problem. The drinks and the drugs were my solution to the problem. The problem was what was going on in my heart and what was going on in my head. So now I still don't like pain, but guess what? I found some things that work to help with that pain. So one of the most valuable lessons out of this is that it works, and that I can apply it to the rest of my life. You know, if I say something wrong, do something wrong to my wife, one of my kids, who are all grown now, but they're still my kids, to a friend, to a trusted person, somebody that I care about. If I do something wrong, and I do, I don't want that to fester. I know what happens when it festers. Been there, done that. My scorecard is very exacting to tell me what happens when I let things fester. I don't want that to happen. This step works. Let me apply it to this. Let's get it out in the open. Let me go talk to someone else about it. And usually what I try to do is, I'll go talk to a trusted friend and let them know the troubles that I'm in, possibly before I go on with an excuse, or maybe not an excuse, with an apology. Before I try to write it with the person that I wronged, I want to talk to somebody else and get their view on it, because my view on the whole situation may be wrong.
Absolutely.
So if I talk to someone, they may tell me that I'm right, but they may give me some guidelines or some help on how to deal with it. Or they may tell me that I'm completely wrong and I need to think about it this different way. Well, I probably need to think about it a different way. So
it's like that old axiom we learned from this step: a problem shared is a problem half.
Absolutely.
And the burden shared is a burden half. And releasing that burden opens the door for more freedom. So as we wrap up, I got a question for the viewers, pretty much the same one I just asked you. So for all of you out there who have walked through step 5, I'm really curious about this. How has this process helped you succeed in recovery? take a moment, put your answers down in the comments section below, and who knows, your answer may be an encouragement to someone else today. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean, and here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Is the need to be the biggest, baddest, or smartest person in the room keeping you locked in the past?
Well, it's time we looked into that today here on My Sober Truth. Well, hey, it's May 14th, and it's time for a double shot of My Sober Truth. Sean, love the title today, It's Okay to Be Me. I don't know about
Absolutely.
you, one of the biggest lies that I think people suffer with, whether they're coming out of addiction or whatever, is this concept that it's not okay to be me, that there's something wrong with me, flawed so much that I have to hide behind, I have to create a persona for myself, hide behind that persona, create that shell so I can't let anybody in. And there's a lot of reasons behind that one. But let's focus in today on the ego side of it, you know. And a lot of times, you know, we've talked about this before, that ego is often driven by our shame, our regrets. We don't want people to know the real us, because if they do, they may not like us. You know, the reality is nothing could be further from the truth. You know, let's dig into this. You know, what is your take on that unmasking of ego and diving into and embracing your real self as a part of step 5?
Well, it's such a huge shock to the ego to talk about these things with another human being, these things that you've carried in your heart that they carry so much shame. A lot of this particular part of this step that I feel like we're talking about now is so in tune with ego and humility and all that kind of stuff. And for me, I didn't know what humility was. I had built up this big, huge wall of ego around me, so big that, you know, the question that I asked at the beginning, do you feel the need to be the biggest, baddest, smartest person in the room? I always felt the need to do that. I needed to be that in order to feel okay about myself. Well, I don't need to feel that way today. I'm okay just being, I'm just a regular guy. I'm just Sean. And do I have some talents that are better than some? Yes. Do I have some other things that I need to work on that are worse than some? Yes. I'm average. I'm a guy. And do I have some things to share that might help some folks? I think I do. But I think everybody does. I'm not the only guy. I'm not just sitting here because I'm the end all be all of anything. I have my story to share. And I had to learn some humility to get to that and to be honest with myself. You know, it's the tools that you learn as you're working your way through this program can affect the rest of your life, and you can use them time and time and time again, even after you're done working them the first time. You know, do you work them a second time? Yes. Do you work them a third time? Yes. But really what winds up happening for me is I wind up working them not in sequence, out of sequence. Today I need some step 5s, so let me think about that. And then tomorrow I might need some step 9s, so let me think about that. And then the day after that, I probably better get back to step 1 and think about that, because I need some basics today. So you work these steps over time, and then really when you get to the end of them, 10, 11, and 12 are kind of a recap of a lot of what you've done in 1 through 10. So really what I'm doing is I'm working 10, 11, and 12 in the rest of my life all the time. So getting back to what we're talking about with humility, and you know, it's not humiliation. No one wants to hear your past so they can judge you or laugh at you or think that you're a terrible person. I can dare say that most people don't really want to hear your past. What they really want you to do is talk about it so we can get it out in the open and you can be helped. Like, so if you were spilling everything to me, I could really care less. It's your past, it's not my past. But what I do care about is that you work this step to the best of your ability, because I know what it can do for you, and I know how it can help you as you march on through the rest of your life.
So I got a question for you. We hadn't talked about this before, but you saying this brought something to my mind. And so there's an aspect of this step. You've unburdened yourself, and it's almost like when the person sitting across from you didn't come unraveled. That the earth didn't shake to an end because you confessed all this stuff or shared all this stuff. What did it make you feel about your true self or your authentic self in that moment?
I had spent so many years thinking I was the only guy that was as bad as I was. Other people don't do this kind of crazy stuff that I do. I see all these people leading these normal, regular lives, and I could not put two and two together and figure out how to do it. And now all of a sudden somebody just listened to all this nastiness that I haven't been able to deal with because I thought I was gonna be so far of an outcast, so ostracized. There's no way I could let anyone know. Someone just listened to it and didn't throw me out. They didn't judge me, and they didn't. I still feel like I can trust them. They're not going to go run and tell everybody else because it doesn't matter. The fact that you're telling someone isn't nearly as much about the fact that you're telling that other person as it is about you being willing to open up, look at your life honestly, and work on your life. That's really what it's all about. It really isn't about the person sitting next to you. It's not about all this magical advice you're going to give someone when you help listen to their problems. What it's about, at least for me, is knowing that, man, this is going to be huge in your life. I'm so happy that you're telling me this stuff because I know how big it's going to be in unburdening yourself and being able to get on to the next step and the next step and really put these things to work in your life and becoming the successful human being that you want to be.
I love it. I love it. We could talk about this for hours. I've sat on both sides of this table, both unburdening and hearing someone else unburden, and just to see people connect and they lay down the line that there's something fundamentally flawed with me, that no one's going to like me for who I am, to them walking away and saying, you know what, I'm not that bad. I've got things I've got to work on. But I'm not fundamentally and fatally flawed like I thought I was.
In your life as a counselor, I mean, I'm sure you can kind of relate with what I'm talking about. It's not the advice that I gave. It's the listening ear that I gave that made more of a difference. And you know what? I don't care who you are. I don't care what walks of life you're in. If you got two ears and a willingness to see someone else's life change, you just sit there and listen. Absolutely.
And you know what? You let the higher power do the rest in that situation. I think that's the miracle of step 5, because it's not as much as the guy listening, doing the work, but that person verbalizing it, and you being in that stand-in, getting it out. Absolutely. So as we wrap up, I'd love to ask this question to our audience. And again, think back at step 5. Think back what we're trying to accomplish in this situation. And you ask yourself this question: what kind of person do you want to be? Okay? Get that vision in your mind. The second side of this question is, what are you willing to do to get there? And especially in regards to step 5. So take a few minutes, think about this two-part question, put your answer in the comment section below, because you know what? We want to hear what you have to say, and we want you to have the opportunity to encourage someone else today too.
Absolutely.
And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean, and here's hoping that you stay drunk with success.
Bye.
Love y'all. Are deep-seated resentments holding you back from a purpose-filled life?
Well, that's what we're going to look into today here on My Sober Truth. Well, folks, it's May 15th, and it's time for your double shot of My Sober Truth. I love this reading today. You know, the meat of it was kind of short, but it didn't need to be long because, man, there is so much truth in those 8 words. No God, no peace. No God, no peace.
That's right.
You know, as we're walking through this journey, one of the things we're dealing with face-to-face is the resentments.
Yeah.
It's those things, and we all know that part of walking out our recovery is dealing with those resentments, but not on our own. But walking hand in hand with our higher power. So I got this question for you, and I'm curious to hear from your journey. How did your higher power help you make peace with your past resentments?
Well, boy, I could talk about this all day. But so for me, coming in as a person who was resistant to believe in a higher power, and it's funny saying that because I'm not certain that I ever was a disbeliever, but I told myself that I didn't believe. And so I told everybody else that I didn't believe. Once again, it was like part of my ego. That was part of the shell that I built up
Well, one of the common resentments in life that we hear a lot of times is, I'm upset at church, but they mix the two up and they get
Right.
mad at God
Right.
because the fan club has treated them so wrong.
Right.
And so a lot of times when we run into people, especially in recovery, who says, well, I don't believe in God. Well, they really have a problem with the people
Right.
that go about doing things in the name of God.
Right.
So
It's the resentments towards the people, but it's like being mad because something went wrong with something you was trying to buy at Walmart. You're mad at Walmart and you take it out on the people, and
it doesn't work.
it's the same thing. So these deep-seated resentments and these things I needed to get over, and these things that I was very ashamed of, it all plays in very much together. As I grew in a walk that started to more and more have a spiritual aspect to it, and I started to more and more see that these things that I was working on in the 12 steps were driving me towards a relationship with a higher power. The thing that the 12-step program I was involved in allowed me to do, and the people I worked with in that program allowed me to do, was figure it out. Instead of, I was not a guy that you could shove a whole lot down my throat. I was going to fight back.
Right.
I was going to resist. They allowed me the space and the room to figure out what a higher power should be to me.
Right.
And a lot of people may not agree with that out there. I don't know if you do or not. All I can tell you is that it helped bring me closer to God.
Gotcha.
But I had to do it in my own way. And I look back at what I know about religion, God, those things, and I kind of feel like that's the way a lot of us were designed. We were designed to question, to be observant,
right,
to pay attention to these things. And when all you know of God is church, you can cop some resentments about that.
Right.
It's very easy to. I talk about spiritual experience a lot, and I didn't know anything about spiritual experiences. I didn't know anything about miracles because I expected them all to be some huge, life-changing, I can't believe what I just seen, I can't believe what I just experienced thing. And it is. But it's not what you think it is.
Gotcha.
It's not necessarily Jesus walking on the water, or it's not necessarily, God showing you a sign by shaking the mirror hanging on the wall, at the burning bush, whatever. It's these small, incremental things most of the time that you don't even realize you're going through, like what happens when you work a step 5 properly. You share with God, you share with yourself, you start to try to get an understanding of these things that have been holding you back, and then you share it with another person. And I can't say that day I was cured. But what I can say is that day I felt a little bit of relief.
Right.
But that relief, that wasn't the end of it. That relief grew, especially as I started moving on in the steps, working more of the steps, putting more of this program into my life. As I did that, things got clearer. I started to understand things not only about the world, but about myself that I never really understood before. We talk about resentments and how twisted up they can get you. And I love what my sponsor told me once. He told me if I waited around on the rest of the world to act like I thought they need to act, I was going to be waiting a long time, and I was going to be living in resentment for a long time. And I just read something, I think earlier today, and it was this question. It's funny that I just thought of it now. It was this question. The moment that the person you hold a resentment against is not going to change, if you still hold that resentment, then that means you're resistant to change.
Right.
Oh, wait a minute now. Hang on. They did me wrong. Yep, but if you wait on them to get better, you're going to be waiting a long time. So it's very interesting the way I have to say that it was some sort of divine intervention when the guys who were writing and coming up with these 12-step programs were doing the things that they did, because it just works so well.
Absolutely.
You know, it's amazing, and it's amazing how my life's changed, and coming to know God and knowing some peace. And that doesn't mean I never get mad. Doesn't mean I'm like, you know, the Dalai Lama or something, this guy that's total Zen, all that. No, it just means that I get twisted occasionally, but boy, I get back to peace a whole lot quicker than I don't know that I ever got to peace before. Right. Now I can get back to laughing it off, chalking it up to, that's life, things happen. But you know what? As long as I sit here in the misery of resentment or in the misery of shame, nothing's going to change. Right. The only time it changes is when I change it. I can't control the rest of the world. I can control me.
And I love it. I love it. As we wrap up today, I'd like to ask our viewers the same exact question I just asked you. So how has your higher power helped you make peace with your past resentments? Take a few moments, put your answers down in the comment section below, because we want to read it and we want your answer to encourage someone else today. And on that note, for My Sober Truth, I'm Mark.
And I'm Sean. And here's hoping that today you stay drunk with success. Love y'all. Hi, folks. Thanks for watching. If you're ready for another round of My Sober Truth, then belly on up to mysobertruth.com and click on the double shot button today. There you'll find the daily inspiration, encouragement, and support that'll help you stay clean, on track, and growing in every area of your life. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, and if you got a minute, stick around, watch another video. Love y'all.